you finish 8-8, and I got to say that I wouldn't be terribly disappointed in that, because that's certainly beyond what my expectations were at the beginning of the season.
And the Browns have held up well on the road this season. They're 4-2 at home. They're 2-2 on the road so far this season. So they're playing 500 ball going away from Cleveland. And of course, we'll talk more about that coming up this week. Let's shift to the college realm of things here, as the Buckeyes ended up in a much more intense game, I think, than anybody saw coming here. 31-24. They outlast Minnesota the other day. J.T. Barrett, the big part of that, 4 touchdowns for him as he continues to work on erasing the Ohio State record book and rewriting it in various offensive categories. And they overcame the storm that we talked about and everything else. And, a lot of people are like, well, they should have won by more than TCU did. But they won, and I guess that's all that matters at this point.
It does, and I don't think that the Buckeyes are going to be a Final Four team, although obviously a lot can happen. This game Saturday, though, J-Rock, I thought, going in, I thought we were the better team. I said something like 38-17, a 3-touchdown game. Obviously, I was off by a touchdown in both directions on that. But this game was over when it was 31-14 in the fourth quarter, when they scored the final touchdown. Minnesota came back, muffs a punt on his own 5-yard line, and that accounted for the last 7 points or I should say the third touchdown for Minnesota. I thought Minnesota they were game in the first half. They came back and drove after a couple of drives, but all 3 Minnesota touchdowns were scored on turnovers. You're on the road, it's snowy, it's cold, and you turn the ball over 3 times, and each time the opponent converts it to a touchdown. You could say, well, you're fortunate to get out of that game with a win. I guess that would be true here, but Buckeye team just Jalen Marshall pretty much gift wraps 14 points for him. I mean, on the first one where he fumbled going across the goal line, I mean, sure, the Gophers had to turn around and then drive the length of the field, take an 80-yard drive, but they still technically scored off a turnover. The second one, the Marshall fumbled on his own 5, was obviously a lot easier to convert to points. But you've got to figure out a way to keep your hands on the ball. Everybody yesterday in Brown's game was talking about nobody in the state of Ohio knows how to field a punt. We've talked about that now for a few weeks. It's, the Buckeyes can't do it, the Browns can't do it, something in the water. I don't know. But certainly a cause for concern. I love Jalen Marshall. He's a huge talent. He's a freshman. A lot of guys fumble when they're young players, and they're not used to getting hit like that. A lot of people said that Marshall maybe should have had the ball in his other hand when he was going into the end zone. It's also harder to hold on to it when it's cold. You can make all kinds of excuses, being a freshman being one of them. But this kid's a scoreboard changer. He's going to have a great career at Ohio State, and I understand that there was some real social media criticism of him. I heard his position coach Smith this morning saying that that was maybe the toughest thing for him to deal with after the game was that fans, if you want to call them that, after the game were beating him up on social media for having 2 fumbles in that game. And I just think there's just no place for that. It's really one of the downsides of social media where 19-year-old kids are getting ripped on Twitter because they fumbled the ball in a football game. It's just insane. So I hope that Buckeye fans can keep a civil tongue in their head when some young man that they don't even know makes a physical error on the football field. It's just ridiculous. But his coach is saying that's the hardest thing for a young man like that to deal with is when he gets home after the game and finds out that he's getting ripped on Twitter by jerks. There's no nice way to put it. But anyway, he'll bounce back. He's going to have a great career.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm such a big. I'm in the exact same category with you. I can't stand that kind of stuff. Absolutely, and it just drives me crazy. God, first off, it's a game, even if they're getting paid big money for it. But at least at that level, they're getting paid big money for it. These are kids playing the game right now. They're still enjoying their Saturdays, man. But whatever, man. I'm sorry that you had a bad day. Maybe you lost money on the game. I don't know what your issue is, but he was just trying to play some football, man. Hey, talk about something more positive. You and I have touched on it. We've mentioned JT Barrett, what he's done. We've even crept the word Heisman in there over the last few weeks, and I know there's some people that'll make arguments, but man, the more you rack up the touchdowns, the harder those arguments get to make against a guy coming from out of nowhere and putting himself in that conversation. I saw the one list on one of the ESPN articles. They were just showing in the last decade, just looking at the last 10 years, that the first 10 games of a player's career who's gone out and scored the most touchdowns. And JT Barrett has now smoked Jameis Winston in his Heisman year, Marcus Mariota, Johnny Manziel in his Heisman time as well. He's now elapsed all of them with still more games to go as he sits on 38 touchdowns right now.
It really is remarkable, Jerry. He's got 29 touchdown passes in 10 games. He's got probably 4 more games to play. The team record is 30, so he's one off the team record for season touchdown passes, Ohio State record. And he's already broken the record for total touchdowns with 4 games to go. He's going to just put some real distance between himself and maybe the next best effort might be, JT Barrett next year, JT Barrett the year after that. We'll have to see. They've got a real issue coming next year with Braxton Miller possibly returning.
Yeah.
But it's getting more and more of an issue. Earlier this season, after a couple of games, and the question was put to Urban Meyer, he said it's a no-brainer. Braxton is my guy. I don't know if Urban's been asked that same question here lately. He'd probably respond the same way to be consistent, but. You got to believe there's going to be some serious consideration given next fall to who the starter ought to be and if you can possibly bench JT Barrett after what he's looked like. Even in the passing yardage and total offense yardage, he is on target to break all-time Ohio State season records in both those categories. He clearly will break the touchdown pass record and blow away the total touchdowns record. The career total touchdowns record at Ohio State is 85. And I believe that's about
He's almost halfway there.
Almost halfway there as a freshman. Right. Braxton would have blown the record away. Braxton sits at 84 after 3 seasons.
What if it ends
but there's a very good possibility that Barrett could be at 50 or close to it after 1 season. So it really just is incredible, the numbers he's putting up. Certainly the offense, Meyer and Herman, and racking up 100 every game practically is a big part of that. But, you got to have the driver if the car is going to go. And JT Barrett has just been so cool and so talented. No one could believe, the one knock on him that was funny earlier in the year, and they talked about his ability to run the ball. And Meyer would say, and Herman, they would say, well, with Braxton, you can have, you can get through the line and you can be looking at 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown runs. And JT Barrett doesn't give you that. Well, JT Barrett gave you that. He ran one for 86 the other day, and a couple of Minnesota cornerbacks were a yard behind him and couldn't catch him for about 40 or 50 yards of that. So the speed's deceptive, and I don't know if Minnesota defensive backs are just quite slow. There were a lot of jokes going around about the Minnesota DBs after that run, but turns out JT Barrett can give you the explosive play in the 80-yard run, and that was supposed to be the only thing he couldn't do.
I'll tell you, and you know what? You just went right where I was like, man, I was waiting because I was going to jump in with my own cool little JT Barrett stats, and I'm like, he's about to hit it right there. But, yeah, you talk about that 86-yard run. Nuts. Just 2 yards off of the longest in Buckeye history. And the last time anybody did that was Eddie George, 95, when he broke off an 87-yarder in his Heisman season. So there's that Heisman word again. Just saying. But it's just amazing. It is, absolutely. And still more games to go. More football left to be played. Speaking of, what do you think are the odds? Because I I already saw some people talking about the possibility of these two teams doing it again in a couple of weeks. Obviously, that would depend on Minnesota. They would have to beat 2 top 25 teams back-to-back here. They'd have to beat Nebraska and then go on the road. Actually, you're both on the road, Nebraska and Wisconsin for them to win the West and then come back to a rematch with Ohio State. I don't know about that, but man, I'll tell you, they definitely gave Ohio State everything they could handle and then some, and the Buckeyes, that's something else too, to handle a different challenge when you're in the midst of scoring 50 points a game, and then you've got all the spotlight on the Michigan State game and all of this, and then you've got the afterthought of that, and you've got bad weather, and you're able to dig through it. Like Urban Meyer said, his quote was funny, he said, anybody play this game the way we did in this weather against a good team. Go do it and let me know how you do as well, because they took care of it, and it's good to be able to win those too, as well as the big 50-point, 500-plus yard explosions as well.
Yeah, that's true. And
they still had almost 500 yards, by the way. They still had almost 500 yards, even saying that.
Yeah, that's right. Even turn the ball over. And then again, you had other teams barely surviving, TCU having to come from behind to win a game. I mean, there are other teams out there that are, not exactly putting up style points as they try to position themselves for this Final Four. Auburn got drilled. We can, be finished now finally with hearing about how great Auburn is. And TCU struggled to win. There's lots of other teams in this top 10 that are squeaking by. Arizona State bit the dust out and up in Corvallis. Some people saw that one coming. That's a tough place to play anytime, no matter how good Oregon State is.
How about Miami? Miami almost pulled that game off, man. I actually was somewhere grabbing a bite to eat and got a chance to catch like the tail end of those games as we were heading from one building to the other. And
right, again,
for
Florida,
sure Miami.
State, another example of another example of a team that didn't look great doing it. Somebody, Ohio State fans are joking around about, hey, you wake up on Saturday morning and you realize that you're a Miami Hurricanes fan and you feel like you might have to go take a shower.
Hey, man, I was cheering for Luke. I was listening to 2 Live Crew and everything, man. I'm like, come on, Miami, let's do it.
Yeah, that's true. It is a strange feeling rooting for the Hurricanes. That hasn't happened to me too often, but they played well, but you could really just sort of see that whole thing coming. The comeback and Florida State actually didn't wait till the last minute to go get it done, and I don't know, Miami seemed like they started hanging on right about halftime, and you could just see the momentum shifting the other way, but
they were going into preservation mode too early, too early, trying to milk that thing out.
Yeah, you could have just momentum had shifted early, and it was kind of obvious what the outcome was going to be, and
so,
I can't. I told you this before. I can't root for Florida State, not necessarily because they're number 1 and undefeated, but just because the way they
everything with them
conducted themselves has just been so appalling through this whole season. So, and again, you keep hearing about this supposed disciplinary hearing that keeps getting postponed. And here we go. I think it's now been postponed
after the season. They're going to play. They're going to do it now.
January.
Yeah.
That is
you saw the last one.
Surely not a coincidence.
You saw the last one, Dan, because you and I have already talked, you off the air even, you've mentioned that to me, and then you saw they pushed it off. And what is it now, 2 days after the last regular season game or whatever, and you can already see they'll find a way to get it stalled out again after that. It's like, come on now. Really? This is as bad and transparent as can be, and that's fine. Everybody's just going to stand around and ignore it. And then after the fact, they'll take away the championship, or they'll strip the awards or the wins or whatever, and it'll be like it never happened, except it did, and we all watched it happen, and you and I have had this conversation before.
Yeah, that's right. We'll pretend that they unplayed those games.
Yes, that's all. It won't matter.
That nothing happened.
What do you think?
And he'll be able to pay back, make a restitution, and out of his NFL signing bonus.
Thank you. That's what I was about to say. Out of his $2 million signing bonus, he'll go make some restitution and all of that, and then it'll be forgotten about until the next thing comes up. And then it'll be, remember all that stuff in college when we were supposed to be helping men become adults and be able to have a support system and deal with the real world. Instead, we helped them cover up the things that they were doing and taught them that all that matters is that you play the game of football. And then we end up with people that end up suspended from the game because they have antisocial behavior, like punching someone in the face on camera, and then they blame it on the world when nobody stopped to help them because all that mattered was could they run that loaf of bread across the end zone and score 7 points. And